So our fans will actually be hearing something right now, but I have no way of actually playing it for us. It's just what our intro music's going to be. Haven't decided yet.
Maybe some like heavy rock, or maybe a little bit of rap in between, or we can go with a little bit of classic too.
We're gonna test it. We got like 6 weeks to get through this and figure it out. But for those of you listening, I'd like to welcome you all into the Why You're Wrong Fantasy Football Podcast with your host, the Monotone Master, currently in first place, John Burke, and our potential co-host, the smarter than his fantasy record would suggest, Brian Tambo.
Thank you. Glad to be on.
All right, so for all of you listening right now, most of this is going to be aimed towards our fantasy league guys, but if you're a fantasy football fan, you might enjoy this at all. This is the first episode. We're going to see how this goes. So we're going to start off with some bad beats, and the first one I want to talk about was actually from this past week, which would be our week 8 games, where I played Brian, our co-host, and I gave Brian an L. And one of the big things was Dalvin Cook scored as many touchdowns as Brian's players got injured. And how many was that, Brian?
Too many.
Too many?
40 plus, at least.
So
and I also played Devontae Adams in one of my other leagues. That just absolutely crushed me.
So who would you lose that week?
I lost a lot that week. Who did I lose that week?
I know you lost in our league. You lost Galladay, Godwin,
Calvin,
Henderson, Gaskin.
The list just goes on. Now I'm stuck with LeVeon Bell, who's getting 0.8 points a week, and my team is just in shambles. But I made a comeback this week, and I won. Projected to come in 5th. So good things are coming.
Nice. So the bad beat I want to talk about this week is my matchup versus Romney. So it starts off, we both played Hasty in different leagues. Didn't go so well, 2.3 points. And of course, John's talking a lot of smack. He's getting really just into it because of course John does. And then it came down to both of our teams just completely going off. And then he decided to put Zach Moss in this lineup and then take him out. And of course, Zach Moss scores 11 points, would have won him the game. He put in Damian Harris, who was listed as questionable for Monday night. So I'm sitting there like, maybe I got this. And he picks up Jacoby Myers. I'm like, wow, I really hope Romney doesn't play Jacoby Myers because he's the only one left standing out of the Patriots receivers. And he kept Damian Harris in his game. So I was like, I've got a chance. So, of course, Jacoby Myers goes off for 22 points on his bench, thankfully. And then our boy Damian Harris.
7.1.
Got tackled, pushed out of bounds at the 1-yard line. Rex Burkhead came in and saved our fantasy day. Now, the third real bad beat I want to talk about is our Commissioner Gatsby. Terrible commissioner. Had all the opportunity in the world to win this week. And it came down to Jordan Cook just needed to finish better than Antonio Brown and Leonard Fournette with some bonus points, which Gatsby would have won, except Jared Cook fumbled on the 2-yard line. And then the backup tight end scored on the next drive, which left Gatsby to lose his game by 2 points.
And to be noted that the team that beat him also has the second least points for in the league and is yet in 3rd place.
Oh, we're going to get to that, Brian. Don't worry.
Sorry, third.
You know who that is if you're listening to this. All right, now for the best segment, the Why You're Wrong segment of the Fantasy Football Podcast.
Oh, great.
And I'm going to start off with LeVeon Bell. All the hype about LeVeon Bell getting signed to Kansas City. All the big Bell owners were like, he's going to take over. Clyde's going to go nowhere. Bell's going to get all this work on the best offense. Over the past 2 games, Brian, he has had 10 rushes for 15 yards. He's had 4 receptions for 26 yards. And is currently 3rd in percentage of running back snaps for Kansas City. As a Le'Veon Bell owner, how do you feel about that?
What is this, taking a shot at Brian for taking a chance on Le'Veon Bell? This man ran for 1,000+ yards and almost caught 1,000 receiving yards of the Steelers. I took a gamble on him. If he was on the Jets, it would definitely be a different story. But
I mean, I'm talking about how my stepbrother decided to trade Le'Veon Bell for some scrub players.
Yeah, because of the potential of what he could be on a high-powered offense on the Chiefs. Chiefs are going to the Super Bowl, and I think that everyone knows that, honestly. I mean, the Steelers are undefeated right now, but the Chiefs have way more firepower than the Steelers right now. So I'm thinking that, he took a gamble on Le'Veon Bell. potentially he might do something, but clearly we were wrong, and he's getting 0.8 points a week. So, I mean, he's almost droppable at this point, but
yeah,
I'm just gonna hold on
would
to
you
him.
drop Le'Veon Bell? In hopes where you have your opponent pick him up, and then your opponent plays him, and he gets less than 1 point.
Well, unless you're in a situation like me where my entire team is injured right now, I kind of have to keep Le'Veon Bell around in case that Henderson or McCaffrey or Dobbins or whoever is the next running back on my team gets hurt. I have to end up playing Le'Veon Bell. Could be 3.3 points, could be 7.7 points, could be 0 points. So I don't know. I'm going to keep him around for now, but he's definitely one of my guys that I'm going to drop probably in the future.
Speaking of guys we really want to drop, I want to bring up Mike Evans for a sec. How do you feel about Mike Evans?
He plays on a team that has too many weapons. You got Godwin, Evans, AB, Fournette, Ronald Jones, Cameron Brate, Rob Gronkowski. I mean, the list kind of goes on at this point. It's like Mike Evans is that deep threat wide receiver that's just going to be there, and he's going to take coverage off of Godwin and AB in the slot all season. So it's like you're going to get boom or bust games out of Mike Evans. I mean, he's going to get 30 points one week, and he's going to get 2 points the next week. So as long as you want to keep him on your roster, like, I don't think so. I watched someone on our other league trade Mike Evans got Devontae Adams and trade away Mike Evans, which was the biggest steal I've ever seen in my life.
The biggest deal. So I just want to talk about how, at least in our league, he was drafted as the 10th overall receiver.
That's atrocious.
Now, depending on your scoring format, in a standard league, he's actually wide receiver 7 on the year, which feels off because it doesn't look that way. In a half PPR league, he's 20th on the year. Because this is a stat line. He has 30 receptions, 373 yards, and 7 touchdowns. But those touchdowns have come in bunches where you've only been happy 2 weeks he's won your week.
He also had a game in week 3 where he had 2 catches for 2 yards and 2 touchdowns.
That is such a Mike Evans stat line nowadays. He's been kind of like serviceable, but not great for 3 games. And then there's been 4 games where you've hated the fact you have him in your lineup.
In week 6 against Green Bay, he had 1 catch for 10 yards. In week 7, he had 2 catches for 37 yards. And then he came back against the Giants. Ooh, the Giants, great football team. For 5 catches, 55 and a touchdown. Pretty solid. And last week, he had 4 catches for 64 in a complete beatdown by the Saints over the Bucs. And that was just more lucky, if anything. That was garbage time. But when AB gets fully rolling, I don't think Mike Evans is going to be as relevant as a wide receiver 1 as people think he is.
All right, Brian, you ready to play a game?
Sure.
So this game is called Mike Evans or... So it will be Mike Evans or Jerry Jeudy. So who do you think averages more receptions a game? Mike Evans or Jerry Jeudy?
I'm going to go with Jerry Jeudy just because I feel like you're trying to throw me off at this point. So it's definitely Jerry Jeudy.
It is a trick question because they are tied for 3.8 receptions a game.
Interesting.
Who do you think averages more yards a game?
I'm going to go with Jerry Jeudy.
It is Jerry Jeudy. He averages 60.5, while Mike Evans only averages 48. Who do you think averages more points a game?
Jerry Jeudy.
It is actually Mike Evans. All those touchdowns have saved him. Mike Evans.
Yeah, because Jerry Jeudy was not as relevant in the beginning of the season, and then he's come off like in the last 5 weeks. He's been actually fantasy relevant, and now he's like turning into like a wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3. So I'm not surprised by that.
All right, here's another round. Mike Evans or DJ Chark?
Oh God, Mike Evans.
So who do you think averages more receptions a game?
Well, DJ Chark gets the targets, but I'm gonna say that I'll give DJ Chark the catches.
He does. He averages 4.7 compared to Mike Evans 3.8.
Yeah, but who has more fantasy points?
At this point in time,
it's probably Mike Evans.
It is Mike Evans because of the touchdowns, but it's actually really close.
Because DJ Chark sucks.
Okay. Who do you think averages more yards?
Who, DJ Chark or Evans?
Yeah.
Who averages more?
Yep.
Well, considering Mike Evans had 2 yards in 1 game, I'm going to go with DJ Chark in this trick question.
It is DJ Chark at 62.4. Okay, who do you think has averaged more points this season per game?
Mike Evans.
It is not Mike Evans. Mike Evans has averaged 9.5. DJ Chark has averaged 9.7.
Yeah, because it's blow-up games. That's why.
Like Mike Evans blow-up games, man.
Yeah, but who would you rather have? DJ Chark when you got... Who's even the quarterback of the Jags right now? Luton, yeah.
Who just tossed a 75-yard touchdown to our boy DJ Chark.
Would you rather have the GOAT, Tom Brady, who's won 6 Super Bowls throwing you the football, or Luton, who did have a pretty good game, but no shot he repeats that in the next week?
Yeah, but from a football team, we know that answer. But from a fantasy team, you want the guy who's getting more targets and more options, more opportunity versus a dude who's going to get buried on his depth chart.
So you're telling me if I had Mike Evans and I offered, or if you had Mike Evans and I offered DJ Chark to you, you would accept that trade?
I'd consider it.
Oh, wow.
I know.
That's crazy.
Here's another name. This is a guy that wasn't drafted. Was basically picked off waivers a few weeks into the season. We're going to talk about Mike Evans or Justin Jefferson.
I'd take Justin Jefferson, honestly.
All right, so who do you think has had more receptions per game?
Justin Jefferson.
Correct, at 4.3. Who do you think has more yards per
Justin
game?
Jefferson.
Yes, at 78.4. Who do you think averages more points?
Justin Jefferson.
You are correct at 10.3.
That's just an easy question, right?
So now similar kind of question. If someone had Justin Jefferson and you had Mike Evans and they offered you that trade, would you do it?
I'd consider it. I think that, I own Thielen and it's kind of shitty to, wait, can I swear?
I can just bleep it out if it gets real bad.
Yeah.
Now let me put it at this view. Last week, Kirk Cousins, I think, only threw for 10 passes. 5 went to Justin Jefferson that game. 5 went to Thielen that game.
Yeah, but I feel like most of the pressure and the number one cornerbacks are going to cover Thielen, and it's like the whole Stephon Diggs role all over again. Like,
right.
what Stephon Diggs do last year? Like, he kind of went off and he put up similar numbers to Thielen in comparison to Justin Jefferson. Like, Justin Jefferson, it's like an explosive receiver, and everyone's already seen it, and the guy can go off for 30, and he might go off for 5, but I'd rather take my chances with Justin Jefferson rather than Mike Evans, who's got 7 other guys around him controlling the football. So
right, that's the dilemma that all these fantasy managers are in.
But then again, I'd have to seriously consider it, because if you trade Mike Evans for Justin Jefferson and Mike Evans plays better than him, then
it's going to hurt, but that's like a risk you got to take at this point in the season.
That's a good point.
All right. Now some hard to swallow pills. This is a segment where we ourselves thought something's going to go our way, and it totally did not. So I'm going to talk about how I played JaMychal Hasty over Aaron Jones. So to backtrack this, because on paper that sounds awful, but from the analytical standpoint, Hasty was one of the last running backs standing on the number one rushing offense, going against the worst rushing defense. While on the other hand, Aaron Jones has been injured for a week and a half, was limited all week, never got a full practice, and was literally a last-second active decision. So it's like, I want to trust the analytics for the first time ever. Played Hasty, sat Jones. Jones came out, didn't even look injured at all.
Didn't look injured whatsoever.
Had a nice 79 yards, ended with about 10.4 fantasy points, while Hasty had, I think, 4 rushing yards and 1 catch.
What was it, 2.6?
2.3, I think, in our half PPR.
2.3, yeah. That's such a bad deal.
I was kicking myself all weekend. It would have hurt a lot more if Aaron Jones had actually fallen into the end zone too.
I started JaMychal Hasty too, but the underlying factor is that we won both our fantasy games with JaMychal Hasty in our lineup. However, I saw numerous fantasy articles, people on Instagram just talking about, oh my God, JaMychal Hasty, put him in your lineup, put him in your lineup, put him in your lineup. And everyone's going to say, oh my God, that's such a bad idea because he got 2.3 points. But what if he got 15 points?
He could have easily.
He easily could have got 15 points, but he got 2.3 points.
If Shanahan wanted to actually be a coach and just play the guys who aren't injured, he would have had all McKinnon's points too.
I only won my game by 5 points, but if I were to lose that game, I would have blamed it all on JaMychal Hasty.
Oh, completely.
But I'm on the opposite side, so I won, so I'm not that upset.
Yeah.
But if I ever do that again, it's going to be crazy.
I know. So now we're going to talk about some making moves. The most recent trade that's actually happened in our league. Brian's been making some moves because he's outside of the playoff picture, trying to figure out how to get in. So step 1, he was looking at his roster. He had all these tight ends, so he used one of his tight ends that he never was going to play for a trade piece. So what'd you do?
I traded. Who was my first trade? Well, I got Christian McCaffrey. My first trade was Marquise Brown for Hayden Hurst. And my reason for that is because I already have Goddard, Hurst, and then I had Andrews too, which I traded for earlier in the season. But my belief on Marquise Brown is that the Ravens cannot keep up this run-heavy offense for the next few weeks if they want to be even a contention in the playoffs. They're going to have to start passing. Lamar Jackson's going to have to start being an MVP quarterback at some point. And Marquise Brown might be a boom or bust play, but I don't need Hayden Hurst when I can get Goddard, who's going to put up 7 to 9 points, which Hayden Hurst is doing week over week anyways. And then I traded away. Who did I trade for?
Wait, who'd you trade Hayden Hurst to?
I traded to you.
Of course. So the reason why I actually accepted this trade was it took me some time to really think about it. Because at first, I didn't want to give away Brown because he was my backup flex play if I didn't like my other flex option, and he has that boom or bust potential. And I just really didn't have a tight end. I was tight end streaming the whole year, picking up different guys who had good situations and having to drop them once it turned south, like losing a few quarterbacks. And when he sent this offer, Marquise Brown for Hayden Hurst, I was like, okay, maybe there's 2 more times I'd actually play Brown this year, and I really don't want to deal with the stress of this boom or bust. So I was looking at Hayden Hurst stats. 54 targets, 37 receptions. Marquise Brown, 49 targets, 30 receptions. So they're about even. And then even at yards, Hayden Hurst has 411 yards, 3 touchdowns. Marquise Brown had 417 yards and 2 touchdowns. So give or take 1 or 2 touchdowns, it was almost identical. So I thought I'll take that guaranteed production from my tight end instead of having to risk it on a boom or bust flex play.
You know what I'm looking at is I'm looking at the playoffs, and I'm looking at the playoff schedule from weeks 13 to week 16, and he plays in week 13, it's 14, 15, 16. So week 14, he plays Cleveland. Week 15, he plays the Jags. And in week 16, he plays the Giants. Let's look at the Falcons. The Falcons play the Chargers in LA, which is a tough matchup. And then he goes to Tampa Bay, and he goes into KC. Those are tough matchups. They're not easy. And the reason why I want to trade for Marquise Brown is because I think that he can have 2 huge games at the end of the year when they're fighting for a top seed in the AFC compared to Hayden Hurst, who's on the Falcons, when they get Calvin Ridley healthy, Julio Jones healthy, and at the end of the season, are the Falcons really going for the playoffs? No, because they suck. So I think that's the reason why I did it.
That's why I also did it. Since the Falcons suck, there is going to have to be throwing the ball because they know they can't keep a lead. And the tight end typically has about 30% of a market share in the Falcons offense. For me, I didn't want to deal with the fact that Lamar Jackson only throws for about 200 yards a game. If you want to be on Brian's side and believe he's actually going to start throwing the ball some more, go ahead. But
I mean, first of all, Marquise Brown is irrelevant to my team when Calvin Ridley and Kenny Golladay comes back, because then I'll have Will Fuller, Kenny Golladay, Calvin Ridley, and Christian Kirk. Right. Christian Kirk in 5 weeks in a row has gotten 10 plus, and he just dropped 20 last week. So Marquise Brown's more, I'm going to wait. Well, I can't really say this, but I will say it, that when he does blow up, I'm going to end up trading him to someone, maybe Aiden might bite, maybe Juan might bite.
Someone needy?
Juan's he's struggling over there with his team. He's only got like 870 points. He's like last in the league in points. He's got the least points against, and he just lost David Johnson to concussion protocol. So he might need a flex play. I might just trade him off to him and see what I can get. But then again, the rest of his team's kind of garbage. So
right. So let's talk about step 2 of Brian's master plan to get into the playoffs, which was a blockbuster trade, which I believe was really in Brian's favor. But I think the other person on the other side of the trade would disagree because he accepted it. So let's talk about your trade with Matt Dahl.
Christian McCaffrey. Who was it? Christian McCaffrey.
Christian Kirk. Logan Thomas, the tight end for Washington.
Thomas for Zeke, Mark Andrews, and Chris Godwin. So what did Christian McCaffrey do this week? He put up 32.1. What did Zeke do this week? Less than 10. Was that 3-4 weeks in a row now with an absolutely atrocious offense? And
no quarterback, no offensive line, only facing stacked boxes.
And what did Christian Kirk do this week? 20 points. So that's 50 points right there. Logan Thomas, not great. He had like 5 points, but I got Goddard coming back this week. So it's like 55 points right there. And what did Andrews do again for like the 3rd week in a row? Less than 5 points. So that's 5 plus Zeke's, I think he got 8. So that's 13 plus Godwin's 7. We're talking about a 35-point swing in 1 week, and that's not even the start of it.
And I think, like, looking at your matchup, if you didn't actually have those players you traded for, you might have actually ended up losing that game.
I probably would have lost that game, actually, because Christian McCaffrey dropped 32.1.
All right, so is there a step 3, or is that to be determined at the moment?
That's to be determined, because I'm going to end up getting Golladay back this week. hopefully. If not, next week. And then I got Calvin coming back next week. So, I mean, they're really the only piece I have left. I mean, I like Josh Allen. I like Fuller. I like Ridley. I like Galladay. I like Kirk. Browns, boomer bust. And then after that, it's like, what do I really need at that point?
So I feel like at this point, you should be looking to maybe trade for a running back or two.
Yeah, I mean, I could trade like Fuller and Kirk and get like a pretty decent running back. I could do Fuller, Kirk, and Henderson if someone actually wants it. But then again, it's like the bottom tier teams don't have any running backs to trade for.
Right.
And it's like the top tier teams are already kind of set and they don't want to trade anyways.
So here's the big factor. The trade deadline for our league is actually this week. It's November 14th. So if you want to make any moves, you got to find your trade partner and do it this week, unfortunately.
I think I'm set with my team, honestly. I think I got enough firepower to be... And then I'm going to get Gaskin back before playoffs, too. So I'll be able to roll in with Henderson or Gaskin, and then I'll have McCaffrey. So I'm not looking too bad at this point. I just got to win out my next 4 games, which I have the easiest matchups in the world. And I'm projected to come in 5th, but who knows? It's fantasy football. It's cruel, and it's nice too at the same time.
Right. So now let's get over to playoff updates and our seedings as of this moment. So currently in first place is your host, who is 7-2 after his glorious win over John Rumney. And following that, we've got Chris's Hyde and Tyreek at 6-3, Aiden's The Morgue at 6-3, John Rumney's Gatsy's Pitch Stains at 5-4. Right below him is the Pitch Stain himself, Gatsy, with Quintoris Lopez sitting at 5-4 as well. Then we have Thal. Just be better, Matt Thal. That is an awful name. Also 5-4. Then we have Juan at Shiloh Jr. Same thing, it's named after his dog. Also needs to do a lot better. Then we got 8th place, our co-host Brian, the injured reserves at a solid 4-5. Right below him is Andrews, Alex's team, also at 4-5. Then the basement consists of Messina at Show Me the Money 3-6, Derek's Thal Take My Johnson at 3-6, and Jake's Burners, who have now been eliminated from playoffs. They are currently 1-8, holding up the basement of the league that we play in. So I was looking at this. We've got 4 more games till playoffs. Technically, no one can clinch. But I was really looking at it as like, what situation would be the absolute worst for me? Or even the best case that I could win is, if I win this week and then lose out, I think I would win the tiebreaker over Gatsy for 6th place in that scenario. But the outliers in our league is Aiden's The Morgue. And we've been sick and tired of hearing about this all year. Honestly, we're all frustrated about the fact he keeps winning games. Would you agree?
I'm not even frustrated, honestly, because he's going to make the playoffs.
He is.
And his 931 points for compared to an 8th place team like my team that is completely injured has 1,000 points. I'm not even worried a little bit. And he's going to tell you that Nick Chubb and Austin Eckler and all his guys are coming back. But I don't even think he stands a chance against teams like Chris, you, John, Matt, me. I mean, if Thal sneaks in, that's another easy matchup to play, but I just don't see him even coming close to making a run in the playoffs. But
so,
I think it's better that he does make the playoffs, so it's an easier matchup for someone else to even go further.
Right, so he's actually scored, he's in 3rd place, he's scored the 8th most points, and I think right now he has the least against, actually. He's down towards the bottom, but
881 to be exact. No one is even close to points against other than him. The next closest is it's Juan at 901. So we got Aiden with 931 points for and 881 points against. Well, we got someone like Juan's team who has 880 points for and 901 points against. The bottom two teams that are sneaking into the playoffs right now, that's fantasy football, and that's why they think they're good managers.
Yeah, that's... I do have to give Aiden credit, though. I think he has been one of the best this season at managing the waiver wire just because of how many injuries his team hit earlier this year. But I think just by luck and the luck of fantasy football, he has had matchups where his opponents either a player just gets goosed or just happens to be on bye. And looking at his next 4 games, he goes up against Andrew, Juan, Derek, Jake. I think at worst he goes 2-2, and he's going to make the playoffs at 8-5.
Yeah, he'll probably make the playoffs. I think that like to actually give him credit for once in his life. I think that Justin Herbert was a good pickup.
It was a great pickup.
It was a great pickup. AJ Brown's actually a stud. I used to hate on AJ Brown just to piss him off, but AJ Brown's actually really good. AB, who knows, could be on the roster, could be off the roster next week, but he'll probably end up being a stud. I picked him up in my other league, so I'm hoping that's something going to turn out of that. And then Justin Jackson just got hurt. That stinks for him, but Eckler comes back in a couple weeks. He gets Chubb back next week. And then other than that, I mean, his team's kind of solid. Noah Fant's actually ranked as the number 2 tight end this week, surprisingly.
As long as he doesn't get injured again in mid-game.
As long as he doesn't get injured. Yeah, that ankle actually might hold him out of the game, but I doubt it.
I just want to talk about another outlier we have. The injured reserves, your team, Brian, currently in 8th place, but has scored the 5th most points, and your team has just fallen apart with injuries. Will you make it in? Your next 4 games are, I think, Matt, Andrew, Derek, and Juan. So I was trying to see, like, what are the scenarios? I think you really need to go, you got to run the table, go 4-0, so you can get 8-5 to make it in. Depending on how the other teams fall out, you could make it in at 7-6. I just feel like if you go 2-2, 6-7, your season's over.
What I see is that Thal and Juan both have 80 to 100 points less than I do. So if I just go 3-4 and one of them goes 2-4, then I'm going to be in the 6th seed. And then once I'm in the 6th seed, I'm going to end up playing you. And you only have 40 more points than me. And if I have a healthy roster with Galladay, Calvin, and Will Fuller, with a mix of Christian McCaffrey, who's going to be dropping 30 points every week, and with Gaskin/Henderson and Josh Allen, who just destroyed what team?
The Seahawks.
The Seattle Seahawks. Yeah, he just dropped 36 points against them. So I think I'm in a pretty good spot, but I have to go at least 3-4. If I lose to either Jake or Derek, I think I play both of them. No, I play Derek.
You do.
And then I play Matt, and then I play...
You got a matchup with Juan. The one who keeps talking about he always beats you in fantasy. So how do you feel about that?
He doesn't always beat me in fantasy. He's just coming up with stories to try to make him sound better. But Juan is projected to come in like 9th place right now, and it's looking like his team's going to go that way because Kenyon Drake's hurt, David Johnson's hurt, and he doesn't really have any other firepower other than those two. So let's see how it plays out. Okay.
I think for this week we got some big matchups. One I want to talk about is your game versus Matt, or Matt Getsunas. So we don't get the two Matts mixed up. He's 5-4. You're 4-5. Looking at Matt's lineup, he has no running backs. There's no one on waivers to pick up. He's projected about 100 points. You'll probably be projected about 120. How do you feel about this matchup?
Well, I hope his podcast doesn't even get released before Sunday because I don't even want him to know that his players aren't bye because our commissioner has time and time over again has played players that have been on bye or have hurt. I think he played Jared Cook when he was on bye or he was hurt like 3 weeks ago. So I'm praying that he doesn't even start those guys. But if he does, there's not other... I mean, he could start Giovanni Bernard if he really wanted to, but at least he has Jerry Jeudy on his bench. So
right.
I don't think he's going to be that bad because he's got Diggs, Thielen, and Jerry Jeudy. But his running backs with Jonathan Taylor against Tennessee on Thursday, I don't even think John Taylor gets more than 10 points.
Is he even the lead back anymore at the moment? It seems like they've lost some trust in Jonathan Taylor.
Nah, he had a pretty good week last week. I mean, shockingly, he had like 10 points, but I don't think he's actually lead back because they have Wilkins and Hines, and Wilkins has been showing up, and Hines is part of the pass game. So it's like, is Jonathan Taylor really going to be relevant this year, or is he going to be relevant in 2 years?
Exactly. We don't know. Another matchup I want to talk about is Fall versus Juan. They both actually projected around 110 once they set up their lineups. The reason I want to talk about it, it has playoff implications because Thal is currently the 6th seed. Juan is the 7th seed.
That's perfect.
It's perfect for you. Who would you rather win or lose this game?
Oh, I want that's actually a tough question.
Because I would say, I feel like Thal's team has a little better chance if they get healthy to be more of an issue.
I think so too, because I think I'd probably want Juan to win, and then Thal takes a seat back, and then I'd be tied with him if I win this week. And then whenever I play Juan, if I can keep up with the same, then I can just pass him. And when we have tied records, I'll just have him over in points. So I'll be ahead in the standings. So probably Juan.
Yeah.
Even though that hurts to say.
It does. All right. Third game I want to talk about. Aiden versus Andrew. They're both going to be projected around 105 once they finally set their lineups. Aiden's in 3rd at 6-3. Andrew's at 9th at 4-5. If Andrew somehow wins this, it could cause some playoff implications where it'd be a little bit harder for you to actually get in because he'd be right there with you at 5-5. But if Aiden wins this, Aiden almost syncs up his spot a little bit better, going to 7-3. How do you feel about this one?
Well, I think that Aiden's going to make the playoffs, sadly. So I'd rather see Aiden win just to get him out of there and then get Alex's or get Andrew's team out of there and just let that happen. I mean, I don't know, though. Andrew's got a pretty solid team with Hawkinson, Kamara.
It's a very boomer bust team.
Yeah, I mean, his receivers aren't that amazing, but neither is Aiden.
He was my first loss in week 1 before he actually technically took over the team. An auto-drafted team beat my team into the ground because Mark Andrews decided to go for like 21 points, and so did everyone else on his team.
Yeah, he also got screwed with George Kittle going on IR and Raheem Mostert going on IR. So if he had that full lineup, he would
be intimidating.
It would be very intimidating because I traded him Rodgers too earlier in the season.
Also, bring up the last matchup, the if Jake wins scenario. Now, Jake, please set your lineup. Don't be that guy who doesn't set his lineup. And as the only eliminated team, he's actually going against John Rumney. And it could actually be close if Jake does set his lineup this week. And the scenario for Rumney is if he loses this game, he would go 5-5. And the worst case scenario for him is he would fall from 4th place to 6th place, which would actually put him in a scenario where he could get bounced from playoffs if he's not careful.
I'm rooting for Jake.
Yeah.
All day. I mean, John is 5-4 right now, so if I win, then I'll be tied with him. He has more points than me, clearly, but anytime Jake wins, is a win for
everyone. It's a win for the whole league at this point.
I think it's a win for the whole league. I mean, I pretty much won Derek a fantasy championship. What was it, a year or two ago when he played Aiden? Who did I make him start? I made him start a Jets running back who dropped 30 points, and he had Todd Gurley in his lineup.
Yeah.
I didn't know that Todd Gurley was hurt, and he put him in, and he dropped 30 points and beat Aiden, and Aiden hates me to the day. So,
because what's interesting about our league right now is the 4th place through 7th place team, all 4 teams are 5-4. So 2 of those teams could easily stay there in the top 6. 2 of them could easily drop out and be replaced. So that's something to keep a watch on. Now, mathematically, all 11 top teams are technically still in the playoff race. So yes, Messina and Derek, you could still make playoffs if you set your lineup and a bunch of other teams lose. There's still a chance. So please be competitive. Don't let someone get an easy win.
Also to note that the current projections are you, Aiden, and Chris coming 10-3, John going 9-4, me going 8-5, and Thal going 7-6, which leaves the commissioner, Nick, Andrew, Juan in 10th place, noted. And then it goes Derek and then Jake. And to also be noted, the only 1,200 point projections for points for at the end of the season. It's a 3-way tie for Juan, Derek, and Jake fighting for who can finish with the least amount of points. So I can't wait to see who finishes last.
It's an interesting point, even though no one in the league would agree with it. The team that does the worst gets the number 1 pick, and the team that does the best gets the 12th pick, to keep it almost like if you were the best last year, can you prove it again having the last pick in the draft?
No shot.
No shot? Yeah.
No shot. That's not how fantasy football works. Fantasy football is a luck of the draw.
It is.
So, yeah, there's just no way I would even...
You would allow that?
I wouldn't even play in a league that had that type of standards. I think that people who have played fantasy football for 10 plus years know that that's just absolutely it's
chaos.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, okay. Now it's for a fun section called Flexing the Hardest, Brian.
Oh my God.
Which team has the best flex player? Now I looked at all the teams. This player, even if you have a better player in your flex position, I went with the 3rd best player if you had a running back or wide receiver, 2nd best player if it's a tight end, and etc. So top to bottom, I'm playing Antonio Gibson versus Detroit this week. Projected 10.7. Chris has Chase Claypool versus Cincinnati, projected 11.7. Aiden at the moment, I think he's either going to go with Brandon Cooks, but he could go with Travis Fulgham. One's projected 10.4. The other is 12.2. Romney has Sterling Shepard versus Philadelphia, projected 9.5. Gatsy's rolling with Jerry Jeudy at the moment, projected 12.8. Thal, Robbie Anderson, another 12.8 versus Tampa Bay. One right now is David Johnson, who might not actually even play right now. Hopefully he doesn't listen to this. Get that automatic L going, also 12.8. Brian, you got Marquise Brown versus New
Asterix.
England.
Asterix.
You changing that?
Galladay.
Galladay? Is he coming back?
He's coming back.
He's coming back. Because right now, Brown is a nice boomer bust. 10.5 right now. Andrew's got Cole Beasley going at a 9.3 versus Arizona. Bassina's got DeAndre Swift versus Washington projected at 10 points. Derek has Mike Williams versus Miami at 9.84. And Jake has Emmanuel Sanders versus San Francisco at 7.65. Looking at these guys, I feel like just with my bias, I think Antonio Gibson could easily go for 100 and a touchdown versus a crummy defense, but that's just me wishing, being on the Antonio Gibson hype train.
Did you make this segment just because Antonio Gibson's playing Detroit and you knew that he was going to be a top flex player, or did you?
No, because I had this segment ready for last week, but no one wanted to join me on the podcast. But honestly, my gut feeling is that Thal or Aiden's flex player will probably do the best this week.
I mean, if Galladay plays, the most projected points out of this list is Galladay at 13.73. So
right, but do you believe he'll actually get there?
No, if he doesn't actually play, then clearly it's probably, I don't know, honestly. I like Mike Williams, no. Emmanuel, no. DeAndre Swift against Washington, no. Cole Beasley against Arizona. Sneaky flex play. That actually might be pretty good. David Johnson's hurt. Marquise Brown, I mean, Joe Flacco just looked like 2012 Joe Flacco, so who knows if Marquise Brown just burns J.C. Jackson.
You know Marquise Brown is on the Ravens, right, with Lamar Jackson, not Joe Flacco?
Yes, but I still believe that the Ravens probably will beat us by a lot.
Right, so what I'm hearing is that I should actually go pick up Rashad Perriman if I can and play him, because you're talking about Joe Flacco.
Well, it's the New England Patriots, and if you haven't watched football as of recently, we're not the best team this year, and we can only beat the Jets by 3 points. So.
Right. Wait, what team did you say again? You can only beat by 3 points?
How many Super Bowls do the Patriots have?
That's we're talking about this year, Brian?
I think we got 11 people.
Oh, it was the Jets, right.
We have 11 people in this league who are Patriots fans, so I think people are going to be real happy to hear that the Pats won 6 Super Bowls and the Seahawks won 1, and then they try to go back-to-back.
They tried.
But what happened? Oh, Malcolm Butler? Yeah, let's forget about it.
Who's your quarterback right now? Oh, is it not Tom Brady anymore? Because he's like, I don't like New England. I'm going to go to Tampa Bay.
Well, I believe in Cam Newton. He's still a Heisman winner. He's still a national championship. He's still a rookie of the year.
Isn't Tim
still
Tebow
an NFL MVP?
Tim Tebow's also a Heisman winner? Where is he right now?
Tim Tebow is playing baseball. That's what he's doing. He decided to pick up baseball and become a college football analyst. That's what he likes to do.
Isn't RG3 also a Heisman winner?
RG3 was busted by injuries his entire career.
Right.
So, Cam Newton.
How do you feel about Baker Mayfield right now?
Baker Mayfield's awful. He deserves to be benched. He doesn't even deserve to be on a roster right now. If it wasn't for Baker Mayfield, Odell would actually be fantasy relevant, but Baker Mayfield absolutely ruined his career, ruined Jarvis Landry's career. And the only thing going for the Cleveland Browns right now is that they can run the football, and Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb are just absolute monsters.
So back to the point, who do you think was going to be the best flex player this week?
Honestly, if Aiden starts Fulgham, I don't know why he's starting Brandon Cooks. I think it's just because he is not here right now. Fulgham's pretty good. Antonio Gibson, fine. I'll give you credit.
You already accepted the fact that you're on the Antonio Gibson train with me after 2 weeks ago.
Fine. I'll give you Antonio Gibson. But other than that, maybe, I don't want to say Jerry Jeudy, but Jerry Jeudy against the Raiders, and the Raiders let up so many points, it's stupid.
Yeah.
So I'm in between Gibson, Fulgham, and Jerry Jeudy probably. Unless Galladay comes back, then all things are off, and Galladay is the best flex player.
Yep. It's going to be an interesting week. A lot of big games this week. So just to finish up this podcast, if you guys are still here, I appreciate you listening, even though half of you have definitely tuned out by now. I do have some guest intros and guest segments planned for each one of you guys if you want to join us. Brian may potentially be the co-host. We'll see how that goes. Till next time, guys. Cheers.